Welcome to Letter to Philippi Live, our daily broadcast looking at Paul's letter to the Philippians. And today we'll be continuing our study looking at Philippians chapter 1, verses 27 through 30, a section I entitled my commentary, Walking Worthy Lives. Again, welcome to Letter to Philippi Live. That's our daily broadcast from lettertophilippi.org, a new Messianic Jewish theological teaching organization. My name is Sean Emslie. I'm the founder and teacher of this class and our continuing ongoing daily study in Paul's letter to the Philippians, the letter to Philippi, which we come to you on Facebook Live, Instagram Live, Twitter Live, YouTube Live, and on our website at lettertophilippi.org. And we come to you Monday through Friday, 12 p.m. Pacific Time, 2 p.m. Chicago Time, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, 10 p.m. Jerusalem Time. And we'll be looking today, as I said, continuing our study through the book of Philippians. Now this is the fourth time since we started in June 1st of last year. So now I'll be looking at Philippians 1, verses 27 to 30 today. And we'll start with a word of prayer, and then we'll go into our study for today. O Lord, you're good. We thank you for this day. We thank you for each opportunity to look at your holy word. We thank you for Yeshua, our righteous Messiah, who gives us life and help us become more and more and more like him each day. And in his holy name we pray. Amen. So again, this is Letter to Philippi Live, a daily broadcast looking at Paul's letter to the Philippians, letter to Philippi. Paul's letter he wrote to this community in what is today modern day Greece, sharing about the Messiah, sharing about living life to model Yeshua, our righteous Messiah. And for us, reading these words over 1900 years later, how we can look at these words and apply them to our lives as we today become more and more like the Messiah, as Talmudim of Yeshua, even today. So we'll be looking today at Philippians 1, 27 through 30, and I'll read verse 27 and we'll get started. Only conduct your lives in a way worthy of the good news of the Messiah, so that whether I come and see you or I hear about you from a distance, you stand firm, united in spirit, fighting with one accord for the faith of the good news. I'll read that again. Only conduct your lives in a way worthy of the good news of the Messiah, so that whether I come and see you or hear about you from a distance, you stand firm, united in spirit, fighting with one accord for the faith of the good news. Paul here strongly encourages the Philippians to continue to live worthy lives, reflect their faith in the good news they have received. Whether Paul returns to see them or hears about them from afar, he calls on people of Philippi, and as by example, to live godly lives that are grounded in unity, a fundamental teaching of Paul. Paul calls for the people in Philippi to have unity in their lives, reflecting the corporate nature of faith. Though each person comes to trust in the Messiah as an individual, it is in a community, a unified body of believers, that individual and communal faith grow, become more and more and more like the Messiah. Moreover, the unity of the community would emulate the unity of Paul and the Messiah, demonstrating that the Philippians were following the example of Paul, the way of their teacher, Paul, and their master, Yeshua, by living lives that model unity based in living and walking worthy lives. In verse 27, the Greek word politomai, which Dr. Stern translated, conduct your lives, is only used this one time in Paul's letters. It only occurs one other time in the Brit Hadashah in Acts 23:1. In both references, the word refers to one's conduct as a citizen. Paul calls the Philippians in this verse, to understand their new way of life as not only followers of Yeshua, but also citizens of heaven, and now to walk in the way of their heavenly citizenship. They have now come to know the God of Israel. They know the atonement that Messiah Yeshua has brought to them. And Paul's calling them to understand their heavenly citizenship, that they have become granted heavenly citizenship by the atonement of Yeshua. And they are now in this world to live their lives in that reality, to live lives worthy of the good news that they have heard, and to live lives reflecting that they have transcended this world, become citizens of heaven, though they are yet to live in that reality. But they are now citizens and have that heavenly citizenship, and should conform their lives to being ones who demonstrate that they are living their lives as citizens of heaven, as ones under the atonement of the Yeshua, our righteous Messiah. Interesting, the Jewish historian Josephus used the Greek word politoomai when describing how he began to conduct his life according to the traditions of the Pharisees, when he wrote in his life, "So when I had accomplished my desires, I returned back to the city, being now 19 years old, and began to conduct myself according to the rules of the sect of the Pharisees, which is akin to the sect of the Stoics, as the Greeks call them." Here Josephus uses the word politoomai in reference to conducting his life according to the halakhic way of life and practice of the Pharisees. Paul here is calling the Philippians to conduct their new lives as followers of Yeshua and following the way of life, the halakha of following Messiah Yeshua. And in the same way that Josephus speaks about him taking on the halakhic way in life of the Pharisees, Paul here is using this word for them to understand their new citizenship in heaven includes a new way of life, a new way of walking, a new halakha, a new way following Yeshua, the righteous Messiah. In verse 28 we read, "Not frightened by anything the opposition does, this will be for them an indication that they are headed for destruction, and you for deliverance, and this is from God." The main opposition to the Yeshua believers in Philippi would be from the pagan religions of their past and the syncretic religious observance of the city. Talk about in Philippi the syncretic religious observance. People would take something from the Greek religion, something from the Roman religions, something from the Thracian, some from Greek, and basically put together a muddled collection of gods or deities that they worshipped. And Paul wants the people of Philippi to understand that their new faith in the God of Israel is a sole faith. They are not able to add any other faith traditions to it. They're to stay faithful to the God of Israel and not, for example, add in something from one of the Greek cults or something to their Yeshua faith, but that their faith in the one God of Israel, the Messiah of Israel, is to be a sole faith of following the one God and not to turn back to the pagan religions of their past or to do some kind of addition of a pagan tradition to their new Yeshua faith. The Philippian Yeshua followers had embraced a new Lord Yeshua, not the pagan gods of their past, nor even the emperor cult. And their faith now is in a crucified Jewish tradesman who is their Messiah. Paul shows his confidence that the love and unity that is the heart of the life of the Messianic community in Philippi will enable him to stand firm in all circumstances, whether persecution by the Roman authorities, pagan religions, false teachers, and others that would come to persecute the community and seek to break their unity. Their lives of unity, grounded in love and faith in Yeshua, will serve as a testimony to the opposition, whose lives lead to destruction. In contrast, the Philippians can look forward to deliverance. Paul's confidence of deliverance is built on the Tanakh's promise of God's eventual vindication of his people. Paul here can share with the people in Philippi that they can stand strong because God is faithful. God has been faithful to the Jewish people throughout history. He'll be faithful to the Yeshua believers who stand for him, stand tall for him within the pagan society of Philippi, the pagan society of the Roman Empire at the time, that they can and will stand in their faith. Paul calls them to stand strong in their faith. Know that they will be encouraged and empowered by the Ruach Kodesh, the Spirit of God, to stand firm in their faith for the Messiah. In verse 29, we read, because for the Messiah's sake it has been granted to you not only to trust in him, but also to suffer on his behalf. Let's read that again. Because for the Messiah's sake it has been granted to you not only to trust in him, but also to suffer on his behalf. Though seemingly counterintuitive for suffering to be granted, a gift the followers of Yeshua possess, Paul sees it as a privilege for himself to suffer on behalf of the Messiah, and he commends to the same attitude of the Philippians, and us by example, to understand that we have been granted the opportunity to suffer for our faith. It seems counterintuitive. It seems almost self-destructive that, yes, it's a great gift to be persecuted for our faith in the Messiah. But Paul here is bringing out the importance of understanding that we have been called to model our master. Our master Yeshua suffered and died for his proclamation of the good news of the Messiah, for his proclamation of the good news of the kingdom. And we, as his Talmudim, are going to face persecution in this world, and to suffer for him, as many of our brothers and sisters throughout the world are today suffering, giving their very lives for their faith trust in Yeshua. Though we in the Western world are yet to see this level of persecution and suffering, Paul is calling the people of Philippi to join him in understanding that when we suffer for our faith, we should understand that it is a privilege because of the great suffering our Messiah did for us and brought us atonement by his suffering, that we share in our master's life and modeling our master by being willing to suffer for his sake. The willingness to suffer for the Messiah can be seen in Acts 5:41. We read, the emissaries left the Sanhedrin overjoyed at being considered worthy of suffering disgrace on account of him. Earlier in Acts 5, the leaders of the Messianic community were brought before the Sanhedrin. They were ordered by the leadership and the high priest that they were not to speak anymore about Yeshua. They're no longer to proclaim the message of Yeshua as Messiah. And the answer back to them from the Talmudim of Yeshua is that we cannot do that. We cannot stop proclaiming the Messiah Yeshua. And they were told again, that they were warned not to speak in the name of Yeshua again. But their response here was Acts 5:41, was that they would do it, and the emissaries left Sanhedrin overjoyed at being considered worthy of suffering disgrace on account of him. They knew that they would suffer because of their stand, but they knew that they could do nothing else than to proclaim the message that Yeshua is the Messiah of Israel. He is the life. He is the one to bring atonement. Paul also acknowledged that his commitment to Yeshua was so deep that he was willing to follow the Messiah's path of suffering, including death by execution. Paul sees clearly to the Philippians the high cost of knowing Messiah, a path of suffering and death to endure for experiencing union with Yeshua fully in eternity. So again, this is not a matter of some kind of self-mutilation, self-desire for suffering and pain, but it's an understanding that there will be suffering for the Messiah. that we've been granted the opportunity to know the Messiah, to know the life that he gives, the atonement that only he provides, but also living in the world as opposed to the God of Israel, opposed to the Messiah of Israel, opposed to us living in the new life of the Messiah. There will be suffering, there will be persecution, and we are granted this as ones who are called to follow the Messiah. And Paul wants the people of Philippi to know that along with the atonement that they have, along with the eternal life that they have, knowing the Messiah, that in this world they're called to stand, and that there is a cost in this world for being a follower of the Messiah. And Paul wants them to clearly know this high cost of knowing the Messiah, a path of suffering and death to endure before experiencing union with Yeshua fully in eternity. So he wants to make them sure that, yes, there is a glorious future ahead, but in this world there will be suffering. And we are giving, as Talmudim Yeshua, the opportunity to suffer in this world where the Messiah suffered so much for us and brought us life eternal through his atoning death. In verse 30, to conclude this passage, and conclude this chapter, include our time together for today, we read, "To fight the same battles you once saw me fight, and now hear that I am still fighting." As one who has faced much persecution, Paul calls the Philippians to follow his example, a road of suffering. As Paul faced opposition to his faith in Yeshua and his proclamation of the good news, he calls the believers in Philippi to stand firm and emulate his willingness to suffer for his faith. Along with rejecting the familiar religion heritage or the syncretic pagan practices of Philippi, these new followers of Yeshua in Philippi have chosen another way, a way of rejection with outsider status. Their Yeshua faith has placed them at odds with their earthly society, and they now must be willing to bear the cost of following Yeshua. So Paul here is again reminding that yes, we have a glorious future ahead. We will see the Messiah. We will live forever with the God of Israel. But in this world, there will be suffering. There will be persecution. There will be battles that we will fight. And we will continue to face opposition from the world around us. But Paul calls us to say, stand firm in your foundation. Stand firm in your heavenly citizenship, knowing that the glory is ahead, but in this world there will be opposition. But to stand firm, knowing that your eternal destiny is secure, your life in the world to come is secure by the work of the Messiah of Israel, by the work of Yeshua in your life. And you are to stand as a testimony to him in this world, despite whatever persecution, even suffering that there is. As a heavenly citizen, we must continue to live in this world as opposed to the God of Israel, opposed to the Messiah of Israel, opposed to righteous living. We are to stand firm in our faith, to stand firm as ones who live now in the yet to be, in the yet to see the glory of the world to come. But knowing that it is there, and knowing that we must stand strong until that day when we see the Messiah, we come to the end of our journey, the end of our race, and enter into life eternal with Messiah Yeshua. So that will conclude our time for study today as we looked at Philippians chapter 1, verses 27 through 30. And we'll be starting into chapter 2 tomorrow, which will include our time looking at the Messianic hymn, the central part of this letter, where Paul shares a hymn to the Messiah, a Messianic hymn, an early Messianic Jewish liturgical piece, focusing on the life, death, resurrection, exaltation, and future return of Yeshua, righteous Messiah. That was from the earliest part of the Messianic community, the middle of the first century of the Common Era, this declaration of the divine nature of Yeshua, our righteous Messiah. So that will conclude our time for today. We'll be getting into Philippians 2 tomorrow. Again, this is Letter to Philippi Live. an initiative of lettertophilippi.org, lettertophilippi.org, and put that up on the screen. Letter to Philippi.org is a new Messianic Jewish theological teaching organization. This is our first initiative of our work. New work is the daily Letter to Philippi live broadcast. We've also started our Messianic Jewish review of books. We have our first review on Corinthians and Philippians within Judaism by Dr. Mark Nanos. And next week we'll be coming out with our second review, which will be the book on the book Besorah by Dr. Mark Kinzer and Rabbi Russ Resnick. And we'll be adding 2 new reviews each month, looking at books by Messianic Jewish authors and also books in the larger academic world, from the Paul within Judaism and other schools of thought that are reflective on our understanding of Messianic Jewish theology and building a Messianic Jewish theology for the 21st century. And you can find out more about Letter to Philippi at lettertophilippi.org. There you can watch past class videos. You can ask any questions. We have a contact form. You can leave a prayer request. I want to be praying for you. You can read our mission statement. You can make a contribution to our work. We truly appreciate either a one-time or an ongoing contribution to the work of Letter Philippi. We are an independent organization supported solely by the gifts of those who watch our classes, who purchase our materials, and we appreciate any gift you can to keep this work going. On our resources page, you can purchase our Messianic Jewish commentary on Philippians. And as I said, if anything you're looking for about our work, you can find at lettertophilippi.org. Again, if you have any questions, just fill out our contact form, and I'll get back to you. And that will conclude our time for today. We will look to tomorrow as we begin looking at Philippians 2 in our ongoing study through Paul's letter to the Philippians here at Letter to Philippi Live. Again, my name is Sean Emslie. I've been your teacher. I'm the founder of lettertophilippi.org. Thank you for watching. Shalom, and see you tomorrow as we begin chapter 2 of Paul's letter to the Philippians, letter to Philippi. And shalom for now.